Okay. Welcome to the Martinsville Henry County Historical Society meeting. I hope you will find this interesting to learn about the history of our Uptown buildings and previous businesses that were here. The source where I got the information was from a survey that was done by the Department of Historic Resources when in 1990 it was the survey was done to make this a historic district, and they researched deeds and all tax information so that they would know the ages and the history of these buildings. Okay? The village called Henry County Courthouse was constructed when Patrick County was formed out of the western part of Henry County in 1793. When it was all one county, the courthouse was in the Stanleytown area. A historic marker is there now. At that time, the General Assembly required the courthouse to be located in the geographic center of the county. So when Patrick County was formed, this became the center of the county. So you can see that when Henry County first left Pittsylvania County, it was this big. And then the northern part went into Franklin County, and the western part became Patrick County. So this is what we have now. And this became the center of that county. Okay? Established in 1791 as the county seat, Martinsville's earliest development centered around the courthouse. The courthouse was built on 50 acres of land donated by George Harston and James Anthony, including 2 springs on Anthony's land north of the public building. The first courthouse, constructed in 1793, was of logs and painted red, white, and blue. For a short time, the village was called Henry County Courthouse, but was later renamed Martinsville to honor one of its most distinguished citizens, Joseph Martin. The land not used for the courthouse was sold off to pay for the construction of the courthouse. And we just recently learned that there's a difference in spelling of courthouse depending on if it's a town or a building. So if it's a town, it's spelled 2 separate words. If it's a building, it's all one word. In 1824, Henry County needed a new courthouse. A federal-style structure with Doric columns was constructed with 2 exterior staircases leading to the second-floor courtroom. You can see that over here. There's a staircase on either side. In the early 20th century, a grand central exterior staircase replaced the 2 exterior stairs. By the 1920s, the courts needed more space. In 1824, Henry County needed a new courthouse. A federal-style structure with Doric columns was constructed with 2 exterior staircases leading to the second-floor courtroom. In the early 20th century, a grand central exterior staircase replaced the 2 exterior stairs. By the 1920s, the courts needed more space, and the 1824 structure was completely encased inside a larger building. The original portico and columns were retained. The exterior staircase was removed and replaced by an interior staircase. The roof was extended over the portico. The 1929 courthouse has remained virtually unchanged since it was completed. Okay? Development of the town continued to center around the historic courthouse during the antebellum period. While the original section of the George Harston House may date to the 1790s, all that remains today are the southern two bays, which are now encased in the Bird Building at 35 Jones Street, which is the yellow building next to the Pythian Building. This section, although extensively altered on the exterior, contains two original hand-planed mantels and a deeply molded door surround that appear to date from the early 19th century. It is most likely that this section was added to the original 1790s George Harston House in the 1820s when the new courthouse was constructed and the house was converted to the Stevens Hotel. After the construction of the railroads at the end of the 19th century, the role of the town expanded beyond that of the courthouse as the tobacco industry, followed by the furniture industry and other commercial enterprises, began to develop. The town continued to cluster around the courthouse with businesses along Franklin, Jones, Main, Walnut, and Bridge Streets. The Stevens Hotel and the Mountain View Hotel, which was later replaced by the Martinsville Hotel, standing there now, were located at the corner of Jones and Fayette Streets, across from the courthouse. A row of one-story commercial buildings with decorative parapets extended along Franklin Street. One- and two-story brick and stone buildings were located along Walnut Street and Bridge Street, which served as a primary entrance to the center of town. Corner buildings constructed during this period typically featured recessed corner entrances, as in the People's Bank, the circa 1891 Kerford Drug Store at 2 East Main Street, and the 1908 Ford Building with its gable parapet at the corner of Walnut and East Church Street. Beyond the center of town, Church, Main, and Fayette Street were primarily residential. In 1896, Queen Anne style H.C. Lester House occupied an entire block between Church, Main, and Lester Street. H.C. Lester was a successful tobacco manufacturer and prominent citizen active in the development of the town. It had 22 rooms. The kitchen and servants' quarters were separated from the main house by a breezeway. 20 years later, the tapestry brick wall with granite caps was added to surround the house on 3 sides. All that remains of this impressive complex after a 1946 fire is the circa 1915 H.C. Lester carriage house, designed in the craftsman style, with large overhanging roof, exposed rafters, and multiple groupings of windows. The large central arch entrance, now infield, reflects its use as a carriage house. In later years, the building served as a bus station. Do any of you remember that? The first Methodist church on this site was built in 1839 on land deeded to the church by George Harston. It was brick and lasted until it was destroyed by fire during the Civil War. The replacement, built on the same site in 1866, was replaced again in 1892 to accommodate the growing congregation. The 1893 Martinsville Methodist Church was rebuilt on the same site in 1922. The driveway running between the present 2 buildings preserves the original route of the National Highway. Several churches were also located along Church Street in the early 20th century. The Gothic Revival style Anderson Memorial Presbyterian Church, constructed in 1883 on the present site of Globman's, was next to the Chief Tassel Building. It was replaced with a new church in 1928. The 1888 Broad Street Baptist Church, which was later replaced in the 1920s by the neoclassic First Baptist Church with its domed rotunda. It was demolished when they built a new church on Starling Avenue. Abe Globman bought the two churches so that he could expand his store and have more parking. It is said that he stated that he is the only Jew who owns two Presbyterian churches. At 1 East Church Street, the Masonic Temple, now called the Holt Building, was constructed in 1914. This large 3-story brick building features large arched windows on the 3rd floor, meeting room, and the classic ornate brackets under the cornice. The Thomas Jefferson Hotel was the first fireproof hotel in town. It replaced the Hamilton Hotel, which burned down. The Knights of the Pythias building was built in 1922. The fraternal organization met on the 3rd floor. The 2nd floor had 8 offices that were rented and a dance floor. The main floor was a store. Okay? Enhancing the entrance to the center of town along Bridge Street was the colonial revival style brick post office, constructed in 1906 with a hip roof and ornamental brick design on the corners. It was replaced in 1939 with the present colonial revival style post office. Following World War I, Martinsville continued to experience a population boom in the 1920s, and the downtown commercial district began to expand east along Church and Main Streets, which had formerly been residential in nature. Larger 3- and 4-story brick buildings, such as the 1921 Hotel Henry, the 1927 Thomas Jefferson Hotel, the 1930 Chief Tassel Building, and the 1935 Oakley Apartment Office Building, were constructed along or near East Church Street in a variety of early 20th century styles. Did you know that the first building on the left going south on Broad Street had a name? It's the Oakley Building that TR Properties offices are there. Closer to the traditional center of town, around the courthouse, the 1922 Knights of Pythias building, the 1925 First National Bank building, and the circa 1930 Martinsville Hotel also reflect the growth and prosperity of the first 3 decades of the 20th century. In the 1920s, on Main Street and Walden Street, more buildings were built. In 1929, the courthouse was enlarged. A number of department stores were also constructed during the post-World War I boom. In addition to the local establishment of the 1915 and 1925 Globman's department store on the Courthouse Square, several well-known regional and national chains such as Leggett's, F.W. Woolworth and Company, and Montgomery Ward and Company constructed stores along East Church Street. The 1922 Woolworths building at 16 East Church Street is designed in the Romanesque revival style employing large, round, arched openings on the second floor, surrounded by patterned brickwork. The circa 1930 Montgomery Ward building at 2024 East Church Street is unique with its Baroque-inspired parapet with oval tablets featuring raised reliefs of goddess-like figures. Have any of you ever noticed that? That's now Tad's space. The Chief Tassel building, named for the Indian chief who made treaties with General Joseph Martin, features a satellite of the Indian chief in the pediment surround of the main entrance. Do you recognize these locations? They all exist now. There, that's where Rania's is. That's in the parking lot. They're Broad and Church Street. That's down here at the bottom of the hill.
Still in business.
Oh, this is the one, excuse me, that's the one that's right behind us at the corner of Jones and Franklin Street. This is the one that's in the parking lot there by Broad Street and Church Street. And then where the setback building is now, there was a filling station there. And then this building is still there, the Richardson Motor Company in 1918. As automobiles became more prevalent in the 1920s and 1930s, a number of gas stations existed in the district, particularly in the center of town. Kerford's drugstore had the first gas tank as well as the first telephone in the area. The Broad Street service station, Curtis Jones, and the Franklin Street Esso station, both constructed in the early 1940s, are examples of the more modern, streamlined approach with simple cubic form with flat roof and wide overhanging eaves. Other automobile-related structures in the district include automobile showrooms. The most intact example is the circa 1918 Richardson's Motor Company at 30 South Bridge Street. This one-story, three-bay brick building features a decorative brick cornice and retains its original windows, doors, and interior office spaces. A later example of an automobile showroom is the circa 1945 Mitchell's Building at 149 East Main Street. Although the facade has been altered with infills and side additions, the rounded corner windows are intact, and the location of the large show windows are discernible. The prosperous town wanted to keep up with the big cities, so new structures wanted to go modern. Facades on older buildings were made to look modern. The Art Deco influence is evident in several buildings constructed in the mid-1930s and 1940s. The circa 1935 Astor Cafe building at 3135 East Church Street, the Micmac building at 41 Jones Street are examples of what was popular at the time. And you can see how they tried to modernize the older buildings by, right here, the Jefferson Plaza, there were windows along there, and it had a flat awning over the front door. but they put this awning and changed the windows to solid glass windows. And of course, this building originally, or still is, brick, but was covered to look more modern. And this had big show windows in the lower level, but they had been filled in. This is the Astor, where the Astor restaurant was. And this is across the side of the courthouse. Globman's, this is when Globman's was there on the courthouse square. And then when they built their new building, they made it look more modern. And the whole building was built in the 1920s or 15s, but they made the first level more modern looking. And of course, our beloved Reeves Theater was an Art Deco type design. A number of smaller one-story buildings constructed in the mid-1940s are simple in form, with the only stylistic influence evident in their angled and rounded plate glass and aluminum storefronts. Examples include the circa 1947 Larry Alley building at 22 East Main Street. An early neon sign is located on the circa 1950 building at 111, 119 East Main Street. Several warehouses and industrial buildings are located along the edges of the district. The earliest of these is the 1907 Gravely Pin Factory at the corner of Depot and Leicester Streets, which was later converted to the Novelty Furniture Factory and greatly expanded in the 1930s and 1940s. The large brick building at 41 Leicester Street encompasses the 1907 building on Depot Street. The area of West Church, North Main, and Fayette Streets, which was originally residential in nature, began to develop as an area of light industry in the late 1930s. Industrial buildings that were located in this area but are now demolished included the Martinsville Creamery and the Coca-Cola Bottling Company. Perhaps some of you remember that. The area around the site of the Danville Western Railroad Station on Franklin and Depot Streets also included a number of warehouses at one time. The Banner Warehouse, a late 19th century tobacco warehouse, was destroyed by fire in 1951. The circa 1925 Twin City Grocery Company on Franklin Street is a typical two-story brick warehouse building and stands as the last reminder of this once strategic shipping area around the railroad. This picture, we have a much larger one downstairs you might enjoy looking at. We think it was taken after 1951 because this is where the depot was, and there were tobacco warehouses along railroad track, and they burned down in 1951. But you can see the here by Globman's, that's now a parking lot, a nice big homes all along this that are now a parking lot. Right there was John Rand Smith's house, which is where City Hall is now, and the fire department. The City Hall was, before that, was over here, which is now a parking lot behind the Granite Bank building. This is a picture taken recently. You can see the big BB&T building, and you can see that a lot of buildings have been torn down. This is where the New College Institute new building is now. This shows the variety of architectural styles. Next one, show some more. So we had quite a variety here in town. The city, EDC, and supporting nonprofit organizations are working on capitalizing on our historic assets. Tourism is the second largest producer of Virginia's economy. Heritage tourists seek out unique places. Statistics show that they stay longer and spend more money than other tourists. It is good that the community is recognizing the importance of preserving and restoring our historic buildings. Thank you.